"The will's been changed, Linda. You get nothing." The words rang out across the marble kitchen, slicing through the morning haze and the scent of brewing coffee. My daughter-in-law, Olivia, immaculate even in grief, didn't blink. She stood at the head of the table, legal envelope poised in one manicured hand, lips curled ever so slightly as she watched my world unravel in real time. I was still clinging to the familiar, still expecting my son's voice to call out from upstairs, for the universe to return to some order. Instead, Olivia was orchestrating chaos without an ounce of regret. I gripped the chair for balance. "What do you mean?" I tried to keep my voice from cracking, but it sounded foreign even to me, thin, hollow, pleading. I never begged in my life. Suddenly, I was begging for everything. Answers, mercy, just the chance to stay one more night in the only home I had left. She waved the envelope just out of reach. "Michael made everything clear in his final will. The company shares, the bank accounts, the house, all mine now. He wanted to make sure I'd be comfortable." She paused, watching the devastation register. She wanted me to understand that I had lost before the game even began. 3 days after my son's funeral, I was being exiled by the woman I'd once called family. The kitchen blurred as if heat were rising from the tile, and all I could see were memories. Michael as a child building model rockets at the kitchen table. Michael as a young man, in a suit, practicing interviews over the toast and jam I made him. I remembered the sound of his laughter merging with Olivia's, the laughter I'd believed in, the marriage I'd welcomed only a few years before. "Don't make this difficult, Linda. You can go quietly, or you can go humiliated." Olivia's voice was steady, almost bored. "Either way, I want you out by Friday. My lawyers will make sure you have the documents you need to forward your mail. I'll pay to have your things moved to whatever apartment you choose." My hands shook. The world had narrowed to a single question. How had this happened to me? To our family? I thought of the neighbors, the holiday parties, the garden I cultivated each spring, a lifetime bulldozed with legalese and a cold, final signature. Olivia had just buried my son. Now she was burying me too. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Instead, Olivia delivered the final blow with a perfectly executed smile. "It's not personal. It's survival." 4 nights later, at 2 a.m., my phone lit up with her name. Her voice on the other end was desperate. All pretense evaporated. "Linda, please. I need your help. I have no one else." I pressed the phone close, heart hammering, 1,000 questions clawing to the surface. That was the moment I felt my heartbreak harden into something unbreakable. If you've ever watched your world shatter, stay with me. You need to see how this ends. My name is Linda Harris. I'm 62 years old, and, until recently, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I built a career as a private estate lawyer in Boston. A vocation carved out over decades of 12-hour days, courtroom showdowns, and contracts that could run circles around most litigators in New England. I was the first in my family to graduate college, and the last to ever consider backing down from a fight. I raised my son, Michael, on my own after my husband passed away from sudden heart failure. My world became one of packed lunches, late-night study sessions, and an iron resolve to give him a life better than mine. I taught him the value of hard work, honesty, and keeping your word. The two of us shaped each other, forming a bond far deeper than mother and son. We were partners, co-conspirators, fierce defenders against whatever the world could throw. I never allowed myself to seem vulnerable, not until Michael brought Olivia home. She wore vulnerability like perfume, light enough to draw you in, never enough to admit weakness. I remember thinking I was gaining a daughter, so when Michael married her, I let my guard down for the first time since widowhood. Until Olivia's betrayal, I thought strength meant showing no cracks. The truth was, my devotion to my son was my greatest flaw and also my sharpest weapon. Olivia believed she could erase me with paperwork and a courtroom. She had no idea the tools I'd spent decades sharpening, the allies I still had, or the lengths I'd go to for justice. I lost everything in 1 week, but I still had my mind, my Rolodex, and a mother's fury. Sympathy might seem like the wrong word for a woman like me, someone who built a reputation out of steel and strategy. But loss humbles you. Betrayal more so. When you have nothing left to lose, people forget how dangerous you might become. I am nobody's martyr. I am the architect of my own second act. Before Olivia arrived, there was just me and Michael, a home filled with laughter, trust, and the kind of connection that's built over countless shared meals and silent moments. My values were simple: loyalty, honesty, and legacy. We cherished routine. Sundays meant roast chicken and red wine, with my son stretching across the same sofa where he'd once curled up for bedtime stories. Through the windows, the Boston skyline glistened, a symbol of opportunity, but also shelter. Michael and I survived the kind of loss that should have dragged us under, emerging closer every time. He gave me a sense of purpose beyond work, while I gave him roots and a safe landing. It was a world safeguarded by routines, emotional transparency, and boundaries no outsider had ever breached. That changed when Olivia became part of our circle. At first, she seemed to want only to add to our happiness, joining in for holidays, remembering our rituals, fitting herself into family jokes. But what she wanted most wasn't inclusion, it was dominance. She learned our habits, our quirks, our vulnerabilities. Looking back, I see how my openness became a blueprint for my undoing. Olivia targeted everything I held closest: my role as mother, my reputation in the community, even the living room Michael and I painted together one winter weekend. My vulnerability was my optimism. I saw the best in people, assumed goodwill, and dismissed the warning signs as imagination. When the betrayal came, it didn't just threaten my finances or my home. It obliterated the foundation I'd spent a lifetime constructing. She didn't just take what I had. She took aim at the life I built from the ashes of my first heartbreak. That's why her act wasn't simply theft. It was annihilation. I had thought myself unbreakable. Only now do I realize how carefully everything had been assembled, one memory at a time. I first encountered Olivia in the heart of spring, at Michael's company launch party, held in a bustling Boston rooftop garden. My son had insisted I bring my sharp mind and gentle touch for meeting new people. An odd blend he always claimed brought luck to any event. The city sparkled beneath a blue sky as guests mingled beneath strings of lights. Michael caught my eye instantly, guiding a willowy woman through the crowd, as if she were both prize and compass. "Mom, meet Olivia," he said. She wore a tailored sundress and a smile that drew in conversations from across the patio. Olivia approached with a confident handshake and eyes that seemed to size up anyone standing nearby. "Michael's told me you're practically a legend at negotiating. I hope I'm ready for your scrutiny." That startled me. Few ever reference my career with admiration. But she did not just flatter. She listened attentively, drawn to stories from my courtroom days and asking about the decisions behind each legal chess move. I watched Michael beam at her enthusiasm for our family quirks and traditions. When Olivia joined our table, she remembered everyone's names by dessert, handed Michael a napkin with a quick sketch of her favorite architecture, and asked about his childhood hobbies. The conversation buzzed with laughter, and Olivia shone brightest in the Boston dusk. At first, I credited her charm as genuine interest. She took time to learn my secret pot roast recipe, asking questions about spice ratios and retelling our family tales with piercing detail at later gatherings. Michael seemed happier than I'd ever seen him. When she offered to help with Thanksgiving prep just weeks later, she arrived earlier than most relatives, folding napkins as if she'd organized such dinners for years. That evening, Olivia watched me while Michael toasted her for making him laugh again. In that moment, it appeared as if she truly belonged. If anyone had asked, I'd have sworn she was the perfect fit, quick-witted, thoughtful, loyal in her own way. Looking back, Olivia's skill wasn't her capacity to make people feel welcome. It was her talent for making everyone think she wanted nothing in return. With Olivia in our lives, the days took on a new energy. She didn't fade into the background as previous acquaintances had. Weekends found her in our kitchen, elbow-deep in flour and stories. She memorized every family tradition, even bringing new rituals of her own. A game night with Michael, handwritten gratitude cards during holidays, spontaneous picnics in the Boston Commons. Olivia and I discovered shared tastes in literature. She left bestsellers on my porch with notes, inviting me to bookshop readings. When we disagreed on stories, she listened first, argued second, and laughed off any tension with clever compromise. We exchanged confidences. She shared scenes from her unsettled childhood in Seattle, describing lost weekends and patchwork dinners. I told her about my own transition from clerk to attorney, about Michael's accomplishments and setbacks, and the sacrifices we made after my husband's death. Our conversations were punctuated by her easy praise for my determination and mothering. As months passed, I let my guard down. Olivia offered help with banking errands, escorted me to medical appointments, and managed schedules for Michael during busy weeks. She read my moods well, knowing just when to steer conversation to lighter subjects. Trust deepened until boundaries blurred. Olivia was present for every birthday, every family emergency, every difficult business decision. Her advice slipped into our routines, sometimes guiding choices before I'd considered the options myself. She began fielding Michael's work calls, suggesting responses, networking at industry parties as his advocate. Even our neighbors commented on how smoothly Olivia managed family affairs after only a year. I told myself this involvement was a testament to her reliability. Olivia had woven herself into the fabric of my life, making her presence seem essential. If my friends wondered whether I would ever tire of her advice, I dismissed their concerns with certainty. She made the ordinary extraordinary, and I let her take charge. The first hints of tension arrived on a rainy Tuesday, draped in the most ordinary disguise. Olivia wanted to discuss Michael's travel plans, suggesting that he skip our annual mother-son weekend trip. She explained, "He's exhausted lately, Linda. A break will help him refocus." Her tone was calm, almost sympathetic. Yet I felt an uneasy twist as she closed the calendar without letting me respond. Moments like these multiplied. Small boundaries pushed steadily outward. Olivia started correcting Michael's recollection of family tales at dinner, gently but always with more certainty than he showed. One Saturday, she reprogrammed the kitchen smart system, erasing my settings. "It'll be easier for everyone this way," she declared. Even Michael shrugged, trusting her logic over my comfort. Minor discrepancies surfaced in Olivia's stories. She once attributed a favorite recipe to her grandmother, then later claimed it was from a college roommate. At barbecues, when asked about her career, she changed details to suit the mood, sometimes marketing, sometimes publishing. Each lie was polished, slipping past suspicion with a practiced smile. I noted them but told myself it was harmless, perhaps insecurity masked by performance. Friends and neighbors began mentioning Olivia's strong personality. My closest friend, Rebecca, leaned over coffee whispering, "She likes to be in control." I shrugged off most doubts. What else was a family if not a tapestry of big, bold personalities? Small violations added up. Olivia reorganized the pantry for efficiency instead of comfort, switched financial accounts with Michael for their shared future, redirected my mail without asking. Each action carved a space for herself where mine used to be. Still, I reasoned away the discomfort. This was family life, always evolving, sometimes disruptive. I chose trust over scrutiny, wanting to believe we were building something new, not overwriting what came before. If you're seeing red flags in your own relationships, keep watching. You need to see how this ends. Olivia's influence kept spreading, like a vine tightening around the old ways I once took for granted. One late afternoon, she changed the Wi-Fi password, just to keep things secure. My phone disconnected during an urgent call. She apologized, blaming internet updates, but a pattern was forming. Every family tradition became hers to approve. Every friend's visit needed her coordination. Doubt settled in quietly. The first time Michael declined lunch with me, citing a last-minute brunch Olivia had planned, it felt like a shrug. The third time, I noticed how he avoided eye contact when I asked if everything was all right. Olivia deflected any awkwardness with breezy explanations, claimed Michael was overcommit, or that my concern was worrying for no reason. One Sunday morning, after I'd taken out the recycling, I returned to find Olivia rearranging family photos, moving Michael's graduation picture, shifting my wedding portrait behind a potted plant. "Minimalism makes everything calmer," she said. Her smile hinted at challenge. I replaced the frames the next morning. They were moved again 2 days later. Rebecca, my oldest friend, called in frustration after Olivia forgot to pass on an invitation to an art exhibit. I tried Linda. She said you'd be busy. The subtle isolation grew. It wasn't overt. Olivia rarely spoke ill of anyone outright, but she built walls through pleasant neglect and logistical changes. Olivia's stories shifted as well. She told Michael's colleagues she'd organized his college reunion, when I saw the invitation in my own inbox first. She took credit for planning his birthday, although I'd reserved the table. Questions about family plans were met with, "I'll handle it." At first I thought her efficiency meant good intentions, but my instincts knew better. The weight of uncertainty pressed harder. Still, I hesitated. Doubt in family felt like betrayal. If I confronted Michael, I could jeopardize his happiness. If I confronted Olivia, I risked being painted as jealous. Torn between loyalty and suspicion, my decision was always to remain silent, until silence became my enemy. The final door to truth swung open the week before Michael's accident, and I closed it with my own hands. Sitting across from Olivia at a sunlit cafe, I saw her scrolling through my financial accounts on her tablet, double-checking password updates for protecting everyone's assets. She caught my gaze, her eyes steady, and calmly explained that she was streamlining things for tax season. That afternoon, while filing receipts, I spotted unexplained withdrawals linked to a joint account Michael and I shared since college. Each line reflected Olivia's hand. Payments for consultants, luxury shopping, even a down payment on a vacation property in her name alone. I brought it up over dinner, but Olivia insisted it was Michael's idea and that I hadn't understood the way modern couples managed money. The conversation never felt like a disagreement. It felt like a lesson, with her as teacher and me as the naive pupil. Michael, exhausted from work, shrugged off my confusion. Olivia's just making things easier for all of us, Mom. Trust her, she's better at numbers than I am. His trust in her was absolute, even as I noticed his signature at the bottom of every transfer. That week, Rebecca called again, this time to warn me about a rumor. Money moving out of Michael's company through new shell accounts. Just double-check, Linda. Something's not right. But when I raised the issue with Olivia, she laughed it off, dismissing Rebecca's concerns as old-fashioned anxiety. I stood at the edge of discovery, every question gathering evidence and surfacing doubt, yet every answer ushered in a rehearsed reassurance. My loyalty to Michael, and even to the story of our life, blinded me before the truth. Olivia's manipulations had buried red flags beneath layers of trust, guilt, and expert gaslighting. That was my last chance to stop her. Instead, I stepped aside, believing the best about family, never seeing the betrayal was already written in invisible ink. The day Michael was gone, Olivia eased into the new order seamlessly. She welcomed waves of mourners, calmly directing sympathy like a company CEO steering through a PR crisis. Her grief was elegant, subdued, full of practiced pauses. To outsiders, Olivia was the grieving widow, managing her loss with grace and composure. Only I could see how quickly she took command after the ceremony, redirecting insurance paperwork to her address, revising passwords, moving files from my office into boxes labeled in her script. Not even a full week had passed before I noticed subtle contacts from Michael's business partners, asking if Olivia handled all estate communication. She spoke with their lawyers directly, using language familiar from years of detailing my own client settlements. Each document she referenced had Michael's impeccable signature, dated and notarized in recent months. Even tasks I assumed belonged to me, organizing financial statements, securing valuables, contacting relatives, were redirected through her. She positioned herself as the essential gatekeeper, filtering what news reached me, what condolences made it through, and what details of Michael's financial world I would be allowed to understand. I discovered letters from bankers and attorneys confirming Olivia as the sole point of contact for every account. She sent me summaries and instructions, everything pre-written and requiring nothing but my approval. Even the family home's deed had been updated. If I asked for an explanation, she countered with legal memoranda, always reminding me it was for protection, for the good of the family. By the time I realized how completely I'd been boxed out, it was too late. Olivia had harnessed the trust I'd given, the routines I thought were safe, and used them to lock me outside my own life. She hadn't needed to raise her voice. She simply removed every option but surrender. The afternoon I returned to the house to retrieve my belongings. Olivia stood at the landing, clipboard in hand, direct and unsmiling. The movers, 3 men in navy uniforms, waited by the door. She gestured to carefully labeled boxes, her voice brisk as she explained which items I could take and which would remain as part of the estate. Childhood photo albums, Michael's varsity jacket, the brass lamp from my mother's attic, all separated. She pushed a sheet of paper toward me, signatures neat and cold, detailing the agreement. "Please confirm," she said, as though our entire history was nothing more than another piece of furniture to be inventoried. Every minute in that room stripped away memories. Olivia positioned herself in the center, dictating what was allowed and what was forbidden, reminding me the clock was ticking because the new owners would soon tour the property. I attempted to reclaim pieces of my past. A hand-carved jewelry box, a signed book Michael had given me as a graduation present. But she politely blocked each reach, stating, "That's registered under the beneficiaries list. You understand." Her tone was final, as though her generosity was the only reason I escaped with even a single box. I left without slamming the door. There was no energy for anger, only numbness and disbelief, punctuated by brief spikes of resistance that faded before I voiced them. The home I maintained for decades felt as distant as a hotel lobby. In the parking lot, I sat amid stacked boxes and stared at the driveway until the movers returned my last key and vanished wordlessly. Driving away, I saw Olivia on the porch, already taking a business call. She didn't glance my way. Everything, it seemed, had been pre-planned to the minute. My exit timed with her agenda. Later, Michael's old friends called to ask what had happened. Olivia had sent an email announcing my decision to travel. A fiction. By then, no one asked for my version of events. That evening, I unpacked in a silent apartment, tracing the outline of picture frames that no longer belonged to us. The absence settled in my chest. Olivia had closed the door on my family's legacy. Outside, city lights flickered, indifferent as ever. Daylight painted worn edges on unfamiliar walls as I sorted through the remaining things that survived Olivia's purge. My hands trembled over a faded note from Michael. "Nobody makes cinnamon rolls like you, Mom." That scrap, stuffed between financial ledgers and utility bills, was now the sum of years of care. While the world assumed I adjusted to retirement and downsizing, what had truly vanished was certainty. Evidence mounted without warning, a collage of minor betrayals I had denied. Receipts missing from bank statements. Letters from attorneys addressed to Michael, but redirected to Olivia. I remembered a June day the previous year, a brunch with distant relatives where Olivia had insisted on handling all arrangements. Later, I realized entire conversations about the family trust and succession plans occurred without me. Legal files exchanged and finalized in rooms to which I was never invited. A call from my longtime banker confirmed what suspicion had hinted. My co-signatory status on joint accounts had been legally revoked weeks before Michael's death. The paperwork wasn't forged, yet Michael rarely initiated changes like that himself. Olivia's expertise with signatures, policies, and deadlines now registered as manipulation, not mere competence. For the first time, doubt overwhelmed the instinct to forgive. Frozen in the quiet, emotional weight pressed my shoulders down. My hair, gray at the temples, seemed a badge of loss rather than wisdom. I cried for what was gone and for my inability, or refusal, to challenge Olivia when it still mattered. Each memory carried a new cast, no longer warm but pointed, weaponized by hindsight. This moment, where trust collapsed completely, wasn't rage. It was a numbing exposure, a revelation that Olivia's schemes were systematic, merciless, and brilliantly executed. My breath felt shallow as the truth rooted itself. Grief for Michael's absence mixed with the realization I'd lost every safeguard against betrayal. In that void, sorrow crystallized into something cold and sharp: purpose. This is where everything changes, and where her revenge begins. In the aftermath, I refused to allow despair to become habit. Cross-examining myself revealed a stubbornness I hadn't displayed in years. If Olivia conquered through legal maneuvering and calculated isolation, I would recover through careful pursuit and alliances of my own. The first step involved reconnecting with my old colleague, Andrew Miller, whose name was as thick in attorney directories as it was in my memory. When I placed the call, he recognized my voice instantly and agreed to review everything over black coffee and croissants, his idea of war room fuel. We met at a corner cafe, hunched over documents late into the night. Andrew's expertise in estate litigation surpassed my own. He nodded grimly. "You have cause, Linda, maybe more than you know. Let's start with what you still have access to." Shortly after our meeting, I retained a discreet investigator, Rachel Thompson. She arrived in sneakers and a worn blazer, laptop humming with encrypted files and spreadsheets. She outlined every possible step for uncovering hidden cash flows, tracking Olivia's shell accounts, and crawling through property deeds. The investigation gave me structure. Every clue, no matter how small, restored a bit of agency. At the same time, I enlisted support from people who'd receded during the tumult: Rebecca, old friends from book club, neighbors willing to testify. My therapist, Dr. Lauren Green, helped untangle guilt from clarity with a firmness that cut short self-blame. I learned to differentiate healthy sorrow from paralyzing regret. The more I built my own team, the more Olivia's facade slipped. Vendors owed payments. Associates complained of missed emails and vague promises. I saw the first cracks. I stopped reacting, started calculating, watching carefully for moments of advantage. Determination stabilized me, a constant presence edging out raw loss. I emerged from the shadows of shock, fortified by new resources and the renewed sense that justice was no longer a fantasy. It was a strategy. Rachel's diligent work peeled back the shiny veneer Olivia wore in public. After weeks sifting through financial records and anonymous tips, she pinpointed a cluster of accounts tucked away in lesser-known credit unions. Rachel flagged deposits to shell companies in Nevada, then traced them to luxury furniture acquisitions registered to an anonymous buyer. Her presentation, dozens of PDFs, spreadsheets, and grainy screenshots, landed on my dining table beside stale coffee. I pored over every transaction, stunned by the reach of Olivia's duplicity. Her moves were methodical, a silent siphoning of trust accounts, a series of corporate retreats billed twice, and investment property transfers signed off for efficiency. When Rachel showed me the paper trail, her face didn't hide her distaste. Olivia's not just ambitious, Linda, she's deliberate. These aren't mistakes. One folder revealed secret meetings between Olivia and Michael's attorney weeks before his will was drafted. Memos exposed a push for urgent changes on family security, with legally ambiguous language that had seemed pragmatic at the time. I read Olivia's email requests, each carefully masked as logistical, where she orchestrated rewrites to estate plans while I gardened or hosted friends in the living room. The betrayal was colder for its professionalism. Rebecca, recalling details from past family events, remembered Olivia disappearing during legal notary visits, returning with colored folders and nervous smiles. She'd brushed off questions saying, "Just paperwork." Those routines, once harmless, now reeked of calculation. At night, I scoured message threads and holiday cards for missed cues. Michael's cheerful texts regarding last-minute estate decisions, now read as distant. Every accidental omission, every small oversight, was mapped in Rachel's notes. My sense of grief expanded. I hadn't just lost trust, I'd been deliberately severed from my own narrative. With mounting evidence in hand, Andrew made a suggestion I hadn't considered. Connect with others who might have survived Olivia's manipulations. He sent cautious inquiries through professional circles, fishing for silent victims or witnesses overlooked in my initial sweep. Soon, I was fielding calls and cryptic emails from people who had watched Olivia's ascent from different vantage points. One woman, Stephanie, described a friendship with Olivia during her early career. Stephanie cited a pattern, rising quickly at every company, charming higher-ups, then departing abruptly after internal investigations. A former colleague at Michael's firm remembered Olivia pushing for oversight on other employees' contracts, often collecting sensitive data under the guise of modernizing HR. Rachel's investigation discovered 2 other benefactors erased from family trusts in the Midwest. Men whose children spoke in hushed tones about sudden shifts in their parents' alliances and assets. Their accounts echoed my own. Slow social isolation, sudden asset transfers, plausible denials by anyone who might confront Olivia directly. As we spoke, these strangers became unlikely allies. Sharing notes, I saw the repetition in Olivia's tactics, always polite, always masked by logistics and care. Each story revealed a blueprint, embedded trust, systematic detachment, and ultimately a silent, complete takeover. Andrew coordinated statements, requesting consent to submit joint evidence if we pursued legal action. Our coalition grew, a disparate patchwork bound by Olivia's exploitation. The solitude I'd suffered months before faded. Our network of the wronged became both shield and sword. With every new voice, Olivia's web of manipulation became less impressive and more desperate. Patterns that once seemed random were revealed as intentional steps in a long-running con. United, we felt stronger, banking on the power of collective experience to end her reign. Andrew worked methodically, guiding our newfound coalition to assemble every scrap of proof into a formidable arsenal. We organized a weekend summit, gathering in his law office, a space lined with law journals and Boston skyline posters, to cross-examine all accounts and timelines. Rachel provided encrypted files for each party, and Stephanie arrived clenching color-coded binders. Testimonies, legal affidavits, bank ledgers, and digital correspondence mounted on the mahogany conference table until there was no doubt of systemic fraud. Hour by hour, the puzzle locked together. Each former victim presented new evidence. Notarized transfer letters, records of company policies altered at Olivia's direction, emails demonstrating her pressure on attorneys to bypass disclosure requirements. Line by line, ledger by ledger, Andrew highlighted sequences of asset withdrawals that aligned perfectly with her known periods of involvement. Legal options emerged. Charges of breach of fiduciary duty, probable misrepresentation, and documented manipulation of incapacitated individuals. Andrew's voice firmed as he outlined a plan. File a multi-victim complaint in civil court, push for media coverage, and release a public statement to other families who might step forward. To preempt retaliation, Rachel encrypted all digital evidence and coordinated with a local journalist specializing in white-collar investigations, promising a bombshell exposé if Olivia's attorneys dared issue threats. Sitting in that conference room under harsh fluorescent lights, I felt a sense of unity and vindication. Our proof was so comprehensive, Olivia's intricate house of cards finally looked fragile. The goal shifted from mere justice to systematic destruction. From now on, every decision would focus on leaving no room for a comeback. In Andrew's corner office, sunlight threw latticed patterns across legal pads covered in our notations and arrows. We'd spent endless hours analyzing Olivia's every maneuver, seeking not just to defend, but to dismantle. Our coalition grew sharper. Stephanie mapped timelines, Rachel diagrammed shifting assets across states, and Andrew dissected legal vulnerabilities. We reviewed public records together, cross-referencing every property deed, LLC registration, and silent partnership Olivia shaped in her wake. Our revenge had to be multidirectional. Andrew sorted evidence by jurisdiction, creating parallel cases and backup plans in both civil and criminal courts. We scheduled media releases to coincide with court filings, ensuring journalists could not be swayed by Olivia's publicist or legal team. Rachel scheduled meetings with other victims' attorneys, gifting our network a firewall against surprise legal threats. For days, my apartment became war room headquarters. Evenings spilled into strategy sessions, whiteboards filling with flowcharts and sticky notes. We documented weak links, sloppy record-keeping, duplicate expense reports, and one private email thread where Olivia dismissed concern from an accountant as irrelevant. Our focus: every point where she left herself exposed, every false signature, every manipulated relationship. Stephanie coached us on presentation. If Olivia counterattacked in court or the press, we'd unveil another layer. Notarized testimonies, direct statements from victims, receipts displaying the breadth of her influence. Andrew held back a few critical revelations for the final act, certain Olivia would grow complacent before the hammer swung down. More than retribution, our plan promised irreversible exposure. We wanted Olivia surrounded, her every resource, contact, and reputation turned useless in a single orchestrated blitz. The day of Olivia's gala dawned with an electric quality. Clear sky, crisp air, and an anticipatory pulse that seemed to buzz beneath the city's surface. She'd organized this event to mark her new business, a thinly veiled display of triumph. Olivia rented the biggest ballroom, hired photographers, and curated a guest list of local elites she hoped to impress. Our side moved in quietly. Rachel arrived early as press, testing audio feeds for the televised speakers. Andrew greeted mutual friends, quietly distributing sealed folders labeled confidential to reporters. Stephanie worked the floor, gleaning reactions, listening for early rumors as word trickled about new lawsuits and allegations. From my vantage at a corner table, I watched Olivia drift from group to group. She worked every handshake, every smile calibrated, not a curl of hair out of place. She performed as the unflappable entrepreneur, oblivious to the tremor beginning to ripple across the crowd. At our cue, Rachel posted the first investigative story online. A narrative laden with screenshots, document scans, and victim testimony. Simultaneously, Andrew delivered our full packet to a leading reporter, triggering an avalanche of coverage. The effect was immediate. Conversations shifted into sharp, excited huddles. Guests scrolled their phones with widening eyes. Several left early, murmuring into earpieces. As spotlights swept the ballroom for Olivia's keynote, she paused, seeing faces turned toward glowing screens instead of her. Questions laced with accusation met her as she stepped to the stage, and for the first time, her voice stammered. Our campaign was not merely an attack. It was a total unveiling. The life she thought she controlled falling apart under the harsh brilliance of exposure. The aftermath of the gala unfurled at breakneck speed. Newspapers ran front-page stories with forensic detail. Olivia's secret networks, the breadth of her schemes, the impact on ordinary families she'd decimated. Interview requests shifted from flattery to hostile interrogations. Her attorney tried to issue denials, but Rachel's digital archive countered every lie within hours. Financial institutions locked her accounts and issued queries to law enforcement. Business partners ghosted her phone calls. Meetings were canceled. A cold silence spread in place of her former reach. Our alliance fielded calls from new victims and journalists eager for more. Andrew timed our class action filings for maximum public effect. Civil complaints in county and federal courts, calculated so Olivia faced parallel reputational and legal ruin. Stephanie coordinated with advocacy groups, making our case a cautionary tale in boardrooms everywhere. In the weeks that followed, Olivia's face became a warning, her privileges stripped away not by blow or threat, but by incontrovertible fact. Every step she took publicly was dogged by consequence. A job rescinded, a friend withdrawn, a reputation incapable of recovery. She was left exposed by the very networks she manipulated, her triumph inverted, her control now a millstone. Our plan hadn't simply toppled her. It made returning to her old life impossible, dismantling her advantages one by one. Olivia's undoing didn't happen all at once. It was a calculated collapse, a slow, draining unraveling that played out under harsh lights and relentless public scrutiny. She spent weeks navigating conference calls with attorneys whose patience frayed as mounting evidence rendered every excuse untenable. Judges issued orders for asset freezes, and Olivia's financial empire, once sprawling, fractured at remarkable speed. I watched as news anchors detailed each auction. The vacation property in Vermont, her beloved European sports car, the platinum jewelry once flaunted at Michael's galas. Every day brought new humiliation. Colleagues and acquaintances withdrew, refusing to answer her texts or emails. Her calls, once greeted with deference, now languished in voicemail purgatory. I learned from Rachel that Olivia reached out to society friends, angling for introductions to replacement legal counsel, or even basic character references. The silence she got in return was absolute. Our alliance of victims had also warned our extended networks. Doors everywhere closed before she could knock. One morning, a familiar blue sedan idled outside my apartment. I pulled the curtains back to glimpse Olivia behind the wheel, shoulders rigid. She never approached, just stared up at my window, perhaps searching for recognition or a last shred of acknowledgement. By then, police served her with another round of subpoenas. Each document, a legal blow, came not from me alone but from a chorus of the people she had deceived. At her former job, a replacement took her office and new policies were introduced. Processes built to ensure no single executive ever dominated trust or finances again. Olivia's name was scrubbed from company newsletters and alumni boards, her photographs removed from event galleries. Word spread quickly. Applicants to her alma mater whispered about the once celebrated alumna no longer welcome at reunions. In a final attempt to control the narrative, she posted a public letter online denying responsibility, blaming vague enemies. Readers dismissed it. Comments grew hostile, full of people connecting stories and warning others to avoid her at all costs. For the first time, I realized Olivia was genuinely alone. Whether she found solace in isolation or simply endured it, I never knew. But her world, so carefully curated, shrank to the size of a one-bedroom rental outside the city limits. She lost not only fortune but trust, standing, and, most importantly, the power she had once wielded over us all. With Olivia's downfall complete, I stood on my tiny city balcony in the soft light of early spring, attempting to understand what closure really means. Satisfaction was more complicated than a simple victory lap or moment of gloating. My triumph, if you could call it that, was built not on wealth but on the collective healing our group forged through shared pain. Rebuilding my life happened quietly. A neighbor, once a stranger, helped assemble a new kitchen table delivered in mismatched boxes. Rebecca sent cheerful texts and invitations to gallery openings, which I sometimes accepted, sometimes declined. My therapist, Dr. Green, encouraged me to plant flowers on my windowsill, a new ritual for marking the seasons, a small act of reclaiming the everyday. My circle of friends expanded. We met over coffee, relishing honest conversation. I joined a volunteer group helping women regain agency after financial betrayal. Each meeting, I met new faces, some still raw with recent wounds, others determined to move forward. We lent each other strength, and in time, laughter replaced tears. As for Olivia, I heard whispers of her attempts to find work. No one hired her. Employers Googled, read articles, called references. Word spread with the invisible force of a bad wind. In a city once eager for her presence, she became a cautionary tale. A story mothers repeated to their daughters as a warning about trusting too quickly or loving without guardrails. She sent one envelope only, with a clipped note that neither admitted nor denied guilt. I set it aside unopened, unwilling to let her explanations stain my progress or dilute hard-won justice. If you have lived through betrayal, never feel alone. Share this story with others. Remind them that sometimes karma needs a push. I do not forgive or forget. I simply refuse to carry her shadow into my future.